The text arrived at 6:47 p.m. on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I was in my Phoenix apartment reviewing lease renewals for my consulting clients when my phone buzzed. Dad, Sophia, your mother and I have discussed it. Thanksgiving is canceled for you this year. You'd embarrass us in front of the extended family. Your brother and sister will be there with their spouses. Successful people. You understand. Before I could process that, Mom texted, "Your father's right. We're using Thanksgiving to divide Grandma Helen's properties among the successful children. Mason and Olivia have earned it. You haven't. Please don't make this harder by showing up." I stared at my phone, waiting for the familiar sting of rejection. It never came. After 29 years of being the family embarrassment, I'd apparently developed immunity. What my parents didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask about, was that I'd been Grandma Helen's secret protégé for the past 9 years. That in 2020, 3 years before she died, she'd transferred 8 rental properties in Arizona to an irrevocable trust with me as the sole beneficiary. That those properties were currently worth $3.7 million and generating $22,000 monthly in rental income. They didn't know because they'd stopped listening to me years ago. I pulled up my contacts and called my trust attorney, Robert Morrison. "Sophia," he answered warmly. "Happy almost Thanksgiving. What can I do for you? My family is having a meeting on Thanksgiving to divide Grandma Helen's properties. They've uninvited me because I'd embarrass them." There was a long pause. "They're dividing properties that were transferred out of the estate 3 years ago? Apparently they don't know about the trust. Didn't your grandmother tell them? She said she would when the time was right. She died before having that conversation. And you never mentioned it? Robert, they haven't asked me a meaningful question about my life in over a decade. Why would I volunteer information they've made clear they don't want?" He sighed. "What do you want to do?" "I want to show up to Thanksgiving." "Sophia, that could get ugly." "I'm counting on it. Can you be available by phone tomorrow around noon?" "I'll be at my sister's house, but yes. For this, I'll make myself available." "Perfect. Call my cell at exactly 12:15 p.m. I'll have you on speaker." After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, watching the Phoenix sunset paint the sky orange and purple. My apartment, a modest 2-bedroom I'd bought 5 years ago, was in a nice but not extravagant part of town. I drove a 6-year-old Toyota. I wore clothes from Target and Nordstrom Rack. To my family, I looked like exactly what they'd decided I was: a failure who'd never launched properly into adult success. They didn't see the real estate consultation business I'd built with 15 clients across 3 states. They didn't see the $3.7 million in property assets I'd inherited. They didn't see the careful, strategic life I'd constructed while they were busy pitying me. And tomorrow they were finally going to see it all. The story of how I became the family embarrassment started when I was 19. My older brother Mason was 23, already working at a prestigious law firm. My younger sister Olivia was 17, a high school senior with early acceptance to Stanford. I was a sophomore at Arizona State University, studying urban planning and real estate development. Not prestigious enough for my family. Not a real career path according to Dad. "Real estate," he'd said when I declared my major. "You mean you want to be a landlord? Sophia, that's not a profession. That's what people do when they can't do anything else." Mom had been more direct. "Your brother is going to be a partner at a major firm. Your sister is going to be a doctor. And you want to collect rent? This is so embarrassing." But Grandma Helen had a different perspective. "Your grandfather and I built our wealth through real estate," she told me privately. "We own properties in 3 states. Your father sold most of them after your grandfather died because he thought stocks and corporate careers were more sophisticated. He has no idea what he gave away." Grandma Helen lived in Scottsdale in a beautiful home she'd bought in the 1970s. But what the family didn't fully understand was that she also owned 8 rental properties scattered across the Phoenix metro area. 4 single-family homes, 2 duplexes and 2 small apartment buildings. She'd managed them herself for decades, keeping meticulous records, building relationships with long-term tenants, reinvesting profits into improvements. By 2015, when I was 22 and just graduating from ASU, her portfolio was worth about $2.1 million. "I want to teach you how to do this," she'd said over lunch one day. "Your father thinks property management is beneath him. Your siblings aren't interested. But you, Sophia, you actually studied this. You understand it. For the next 5 years I became Grandma's apprentice. I learned everything. How to screen tenants, handle maintenance, negotiate leases, read market trends, manage cash flow, deal with difficult situations. I spent weekends helping her inspect properties, evenings reviewing lease agreements, mornings discussing investment strategies. My family thought I was just visiting Grandma. They had no idea I was getting a masterclass in real estate management. In 2020, when Grandma was 78 and I was 26, she called me to her attorney's office. Sophia, I'm not getting any younger. I need to make sure these properties go to someone who will respect them, manage them properly, and understand what they represent. You should leave them to whoever you want, Grandma. I'm leaving them to you. All 8 properties. Through an irrevocable trust. The transfer is effective immediately. I'd been shocked. But what about Dad? Mason? Olivia? Your father would sell them to buy stocks he doesn't understand. Mason would hire a property management company and never look at the buildings again. Olivia would cash out immediately to fund her medical practice. None of them see these properties as I do, as homes for families, as communities, as a legacy built brick by brick over 50 years. But Grandma, this will cause problems. Only if they're small-minded people. Which, unfortunately, they are. She'd squeezed my hand. Sophia, you've spent 5 years learning this business not because you wanted my properties, but because you genuinely love this work. That's exactly who should have them. The trust was executed that week. 8 properties all transferred to me. Total value at the time, $2.4 million. Grandma kept living in her Scottsdale home, but the rentals became mine to manage. Should we tell the family? I'd asked Robert Morrison, the attorney, after signing everything. Grandma had shaken her head. Not yet. I want to see if they treat you differently once they think there's an inheritance to fight over. Call it a test. That test ran for 3 years, until Grandma died in August of this year at 81. And they failed spectacularly. Thanksgiving morning arrived clear and warm. A perfect Phoenix November day. I dressed carefully in nice jeans, a cashmere sweater, and the diamond earrings Grandma had given me for my 25th birthday. Real diamonds, she'd said. From a real woman who built real wealth. Don't let anyone make you feel small, Sophia. I wouldn't. I drove to my parents' house in Paradise Valley, pulling my Toyota into the circular driveway next to Mason's Mercedes and Olivia's BMW. The house was massive, ostentatious, the kind of place designed to impress rather than welcome. I walked in without knocking. The house I'd grown up in, though I'd never quite belonged here. The family was gathered in the formal living room. Mom, Dad, Mason with his wife Kendall, Olivia with her husband James. And, surprisingly, Robert Morrison. They all turned when I walked in. The room temperature dropped 20 degrees. Sophia. Dad's voice was ice. I explicitly told you not to come. And I explicitly ignored you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Mom stood up. This is inappropriate. We're having a private family meeting about estate matters. You're not part of this discussion. Estate matters? I looked at Robert. You're here for Grandma's estate? He gave me a slight nod. Your father hired me to handle the property transfers. Interesting. What properties are we transferring? Mason stepped forward, looking every inch the successful attorney in his designer suit. Grandma's rental properties. 8 of them across the Phoenix area. The family has decided they should be divided among the children who've actually made something of their lives. The children who've made something of their lives, I repeated. And I'm not one of those? Sophia, please don't make this harder than it needs to be, Olivia said, her doctor voice smooth and condescending. We know you've struggled. We're actually going to give you something. Dad said you could have $50,000 from Grandma's personal accounts. That's generous, considering. Considering what? Considering you've done nothing to deserve an equal share, Dad said bluntly. Mason is a successful attorney. Olivia is a physician. You're what do you call yourself? A consultant. Real estate consultant, yes. Exactly. You help other people manage properties because you can't afford to own any yourself. It's a service job, Sophia. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not the same as your siblings' careers. I looked around the room at their faces. Smug certainty from Mason. Pitying condescension from Olivia. Embarrassed dismissal from my parents. Kendall and James looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. So the plan is to divide Grandma's 8 rental properties among Mason and Olivia? I asked. 3 properties to Mason, 3 to Olivia, 2 to be sold with proceeds split between them, Dad confirmed. And $50,000 cash to you. It's fair given the circumstances. The circumstances being that you've decided I'm a failure? We've decided you haven't earned an equal share of a significant real estate portfolio, Mom corrected. This isn't about punishment. It's about rewarding success. I turned to Robert. And you're facilitating this? He looked deeply uncomfortable. Your father retained me to handle the estate transfers, yes. Did you bring the property deeds? I have them, but Sophia. Can I see them? He hesitated, then pulled out a folder. These are copies of the property records your father gave me. I flipped through them. 8 properties, just as I expected. All with one crucial detail that none of them had apparently noticed. These deeds are all from before 2020, I said. Yes, that's when Grandma acquired most of them, Dad said impatiently. What's your point? My point is that property deeds should be current. These are outdated. Mason rolled his eyes. Sophia, just because you took a few real estate classes doesn't mean you understand legal documents. These deeds are fine. Are they, Robert? I asked. The attorney's face was carefully neutral. Actually, these deeds don't reflect the current ownership. The room went silent. What do you mean, current ownership? Dad demanded. I mean these deeds are from before Mrs. Helen Carter executed her irrevocable trust in 2020. These documents don't show who actually owns the properties now. Mom's face went pale. What trust? My phone rang at exactly 12:15 p.m., right on schedule. Excuse me, I need to take this, I said, putting it on speaker. Hello. Miss Carter? This is Robert Morrison, your trust attorney. I'm calling regarding the 8 Arizona rental properties your grandmother deeded to you in 2020. I wanted to confirm our meeting next week to review the annual property valuations. The silence in the room was absolute. Robert, the real Robert Morrison, not the attorney my father had tried to hire, continued smoothly. The current portfolio value is approximately $3.7 million, with gross monthly rental income of $22,000. The properties are performing well, and I wanted to discuss potentially expanding your portfolio in the coming year. Thank you, Robert, I said calmly. Can I call you back? I'm at a family gathering. Of course. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, Miss Carter. I hung up. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Dad found his voice. What the hell was that? I turned to the Robert Morrison in the room, who I now realized was a different attorney entirely, probably someone Dad had found without doing proper research. Who are you? I asked. Robert Morrison, he said. Your father hired me to handle. You're not the Robert Morrison. You're not Grandma Helen's estate attorney. His face went red. I'm an estate attorney named Robert Morrison. Your father found me through a Google search, probably. I looked at Dad. Did you even verify you had the right attorney? Or did you just hire the first Robert Morrison you found because that was the name on Grandma's old documents? Dad's expression confirmed my suspicion. Oh my God, Olivia whispered. You hired the wrong lawyer? That's not the point. Dad shouted. What is this about properties being deeded to you? Exactly what the real Robert Morrison said on the phone. In 2020, Grandma transferred all 8 rental properties to an irrevocable trust with me as the sole beneficiary. I've been the legal owner for 3 years. That's impossible, Mason said. Grandma would have told us. Would she? The grandmother you visited twice a year? The one whose property management work you called beneath you? That grandmother. I visited her every month, Mom protested. For lunch. Quick lunches where you talked about your country club friends and never asked her about her properties, her tenants, or her life. I pulled out my phone. I have 5 years of text messages with Grandma. We talked almost daily about the properties. She taught me everything about real estate management because I actually cared enough to learn. Kendall, Mason's wife, spoke up quietly. When was this trust executed? March 2020. 4.5 years ago. And you've been managing the properties since then? Yes. Grandma stayed on as a consultant, but I took over operations. Lease negotiations, maintenance coordination, tenant relations, everything. The 8 properties generating $22,000 monthly? Olivia's Dr. Brain was doing the math. That's $264,000 annually. For 3 years, that's almost $800,000 in rental income. $792,000, actually. Though expenses, property taxes, and insurance take about 40%. My net income from the properties has been roughly $475,000 over 3 years. Dad sat down heavily. You've made $500,000 in 3 years and never told us? You never asked. You decided I was a failure and stopped paying attention to anything I did. Mom's voice was shaking. Those properties were supposed to be part of the estate. Divided among all the children. They're not part of the estate. They were transferred out in 2020. The only estate assets are Grandma's personal residence and about $150,000 in bank accounts and investments. The Scottsdale house? Mason asked hopefully. Is being sold with proceeds split 3 ways among all children. That's what Grandma's will states. Robert, the real Robert Morrison, will be handling that. 3 ways. Dad repeated. You're getting 1/3 of the house proceeds even though you got all the rental properties? That's what the will says. Grandma was very specific. The room erupted into chaos. Mason yelling about unfair distribution. Olivia demanding to see documentation. Mom crying. Dad red-faced and furious. I stood quietly in the center of it all, waiting. Finally, Mason turned on me. You manipulated her. You spent time with her specifically to get the properties. I spent time with her because I loved her and she was teaching me something I wanted to learn. The properties were her idea, not mine. Bullshit. You saw a frail old woman with assets and you moved in like a vulture. Mason, I was 22 when I started learning from Grandma. She was 73 and sharper than you'll ever be. She wasn't frail, she wasn't confused, and she wasn't manipulated. She was a brilliant woman who'd built a real estate portfolio over 50 years and wanted to pass it to someone who'd respect her work. Someone who'd spend 5 years kissing her ass, you mean? I spent 5 years learning from her. There's a difference. Olivia tried a different approach. Sophia, this isn't fair to the family. Those properties should be divided equally. We can work something out, sell them and split the proceeds or each take a few properties. We're family. Family, I repeated. The family that uninvited me from Thanksgiving because I'd embarrassed them? That family. Silence. For the record, I continued, I wasn't going to come today. I was going to spend Thanksgiving alone rather than subject myself to more years of being treated like I'm worthless. But then Dad texted to specifically tell me I was an embarrassment and I realized something. I'm done letting you define my worth. No one is defining your worth, Mom said weakly. We just thought. You thought I was a failure. You've thought that for 10 years. And you know what? I let you think it because it was easier than constantly defending myself. But Grandma saw something different. She saw someone who asked questions, who wanted to learn, who respected the work she'd put into building something real. I pulled a folder from my bag. I'd come prepared. These are the trust documents. Executed March 15, 2020. Witnessed by 2 attorneys and a notary. Completely legal, completely irrevocable. 8 properties transferred to Sophia Marie Carter, with distribution to occur upon Helen Carter's death or incapacitation. The fake Robert Morrison reached for the folder. I handed it to him. He read through it, his face growing more uncomfortable. This is legitimate. Properly executed irrevocable trust. The properties aren't part of the estate. How much did Dad pay you? I asked. I don't think that's. How much? A $5,000 retainer to handle the estate property transfers. You might want to refund that. There are no estate properties to transfer. Dad found his voice. This is unacceptable. We'll contest the trust. We'll prove you manipulated her, influenced her decision. Good luck with that, I said. Grandma included a clause specifically anticipating challenges. If anyone contests the trust, they forfeit their share of the house proceeds and any other estate assets. She was very thorough. I'd never actually read that clause before, but I was betting Grandma had included it. She knew her family. Mason turned to the attorney. Is that enforceable? Fake Robert nodded. If it's in the trust documents, yes. No contest clauses are standard and enforceable in Arizona. So if we challenge this, we lose everything? Olivia asked. You'd lose your share of the house sale, which, split 3 ways after selling costs, will probably be about $400,000 each. And if we don't challenge it? Dad asked. Then you accept that the rental properties belong to Sophia and you split the house proceeds 3 ways. That's your choice. The family sat in stunned silence. Finally, James, Olivia's husband who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Can I ask a question? Sophia, what did you actually do for those 3 years? Between getting the properties and now? I managed them. Coordinated maintenance, handled tenant issues, reviewed leases, made sure everything was running smoothly. Grandma was still alive for most of that time, so we worked together. But after she died in August, it became fully my responsibility. And the income? Has been deposited into accounts under the trust. I've been living off my consulting income, about $75,000 a year, and saving the rental proceeds. Why? Olivia asked. Why not use the money? Because I wanted to prove to myself that I could make it on my own. The properties were always meant to be long-term wealth building, not spending money. Kendall spoke again, her voice thoughtful. So you have roughly $475,000 saved from 3 years of rental income, plus whatever you've saved from your consulting work, plus you own $3.7 million in real estate assets? That's about right. And you drive a 6-year-old Toyota and live in a modest apartment? Yes. Why? Because I don't need to prove my worth with status symbols. Grandma taught me that real wealth is quiet. It's assets that appreciate, income that compounds, financial security that lets you sleep at night. Not cars and designer clothes. Mason scoffed. This is insane. You're sitting on millions and living like you're broke. I'm living within my consulting income and building real wealth. There's a difference between being broke and being strategic. It's called being cheap, he muttered. It's called being financially intelligent. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Mason? How much debt are you carrying? $300,000? $400,000? Law school loans, the Mercedes lease, the house mortgage you can barely afford. His face went red. That's none of your business. You're right. Just like my financial decisions are none of yours. Dad stood up. This is ridiculous. I don't accept this. Helen was my mother. Those properties should come to me to be distributed as I see fit. Grandma was very clear about how she saw fit to distribute them. To me. You poisoned her against her own family. No, Dad. You did that yourselves. Every time you dismissed her property management work as beneath you. Every time you suggested she sell the properties and invest in the stock market. Every time you made it clear you didn't respect what she'd built. That's not true. It is true. I was there. I heard you tell her that rental properties were passive income for people who couldn't make real money. I heard Mason say property management was what poor people do. I heard Olivia suggest Grandma was too old to handle tenants and should hire a management company. Mom was crying openly now. We were trying to help her. We thought it was too much work for someone her age. She loved that work. It wasn't a burden, it was her legacy. And the only person who understood that was me. The room fell silent again. Finally, the fake Robert Morrison cleared his throat. I think it's clear that the rental properties are not part of the estate I was hired to handle. If you'd like to proceed with distributing the actual estate assets, the house and financial accounts, I can still help with that. Otherwise, I'll refund your retainer and bow out. Refund it, Dad said bitterly. This whole thing is a waste of time. After the attorney left, the family sat in silence. The Thanksgiving turkey was in the oven, filling the house with a smell that now felt absurd given the circumstances. What now? Olivia finally asked. How you decide, I said. You can accept reality. That Grandma left the properties to me because I was the only one who cared enough to learn her business. You can take your shares of the house proceeds and move on. Or you can fight me, violate the no contest clause, lose everything and destroy what's left of this family. There's nothing left of this family, Mason said bitterly. You made sure of that. I didn't do this. Grandma did. She saw what I've been seeing for years. A family that values status over substance, appearances over reality, credentials over character. She chose to reward something different. So what, you're just going to take everything and walk away? Dad demanded. I'm going to take what was legally given to me and live my life. Whether I walk away from this family depends on whether you can accept me as I actually am instead of the failure you've decided I am. Mom stood up, her voice breaking. We never said you were a failure. You said I'd embarrass you. You uninvited me from Thanksgiving. You were planning to divide an inheritance without me because I hadn't earned it. What would you call that? She had no answer. I picked up my bag. The real Robert Morrison will contact you about the house sale. It should close within 60 days. You'll each get roughly $400,000. Use it wisely. You're leaving? Olivia asked. I'm going to spend Thanksgiving with people who actually want me there. Who? Mason scoffed. You don't have anyone. I have Grandma's tenants, many of whom have become friends. I have my consulting clients who respect my expertise. I have colleagues who value my work. I have a whole life you've never bothered to ask about. I walked toward the door. Sophia, wait. It was James, Olivia's husband. Can I ask one more question? What? If your family had treated you differently, with respect, with interest in your life, with actual affection, would you have shared the properties with them? I thought about it carefully. If they'd treated me differently, Grandma might have divided things differently. But they didn't. And she didn't. And honestly, I'm glad. Because I've learned something valuable. I don't need their approval. I don't need their validation. I don't need them to succeed. And that freedom is worth more than any inheritance. I left them sitting in their expensive house with their expensive clothes and their expensive cars, and I drove to my modest apartment in my 6-year-old Toyota. And I'd never felt richer in my life. The next morning I woke to 73 missed calls and 42 text messages. Most were from my family, ranging from angry demands to emotional pleas. I deleted them all without reading. But there was one from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Carter, this is Patricia Chin, real estate reporter for the Arizona Republic. I heard about your grandmother's estate and the family situation. I'd love to talk to you about real estate legacy planning and family dynamics. Would you be interested in an interview? I stared at that message for a long time. Then I called my actual attorney, the real Robert Morrison. They're going to make this public, I said. I can feel it. Mason or Dad will talk to reporters, spin it like I manipulated Grandma, try to destroy my reputation. Do you want me to send cease and desist letters? No. I want to tell the truth first. On my terms. I called Patricia Chin back. The interview ran 3 days later. The granddaughter who inherited an empire while her family wasn't looking. Patricia had done her homework. She'd interviewed my tenants who spoke about how I'd maintained their homes, worked with them during financial hardships, created stable communities. She talked to Grandma's friends who confirmed that she'd been sharp and capable until the day she died, that the trust was entirely her idea, that she'd been frustrated with her family's dismissal of her work. She'd even found Grandma's financial advisor who confirmed that Helen Carter had been one of the savviest investors he'd ever known, that she'd built her portfolio through decades of careful planning, and that she'd been very specific about wanting it to go to someone who understood its value. The article painted a picture of a brilliant woman passing her legacy to the only family member who'd taken time to learn it, and a family too caught up in their own definitions of success to notice. It went viral. Within a week, I had interview requests from real estate publications, podcasts about family wealth, financial planning websites. Everyone wanted to know about the invisible heiress, who'd inherited millions while her family called her a failure. My consulting business exploded. Property owners across 3 states wanted to work with someone who'd been trained by a legendary investor like Helen Carter. And my family? They got exactly what they'd feared. Embarrassment. Not because of me but because their own behavior was now public record. The text messages uninviting me. The Thanksgiving meeting to divide assets they didn't own. The years of treating me like I was worthless while I was building real wealth. The internet is not kind to wealthy people who dismiss family members for not being successful enough. 6 months later, I sat in a coffee shop in Scottsdale meeting with a young woman named Jessica who'd reached out after reading the article. My family is doing the same thing to me, she explained. I'm 25, working in property management, learning the business. My parents keep asking when I'm going to get a real job. They compare me to my siblings constantly. I read your story and it gave me hope. Hope for what? I asked. Hope that I'm not crazy. That building something real is more important than building something impressive. That validation doesn't have to come from family. I smiled. You're not crazy. And you know what's funny? 6 months ago I would have felt sorry for myself about the family situation. But now, I'm grateful. Being dismissed forced me to build something that was entirely mine, that I could trust in regardless of anyone else's opinion. Do you talk to your family now? Not really. Mason sent one email apologizing for the misunderstanding. Olivia sent flowers with a card saying she wanted to reconnect. My parents sent a lawyer with an offer to settle everything amicably, which was really just another attempt to get me to share the properties. What did you do? Sent Mason's email to spam. Donated Olivia's flowers to a nursing home. Told my parents' lawyer that everything was already settled and there was nothing to discuss. Don't you miss them? I thought about it. I miss the idea of them. The family I wished I had. But the actual people? The ones who made me feel small for 29 years. Well, I don't miss that. What about holidays? I spent Christmas with my tenants. We had a potluck at one of the apartment buildings. It was the best holiday I've ever had. Jessica smiled. That sounds perfect. It was. Because it was real. No performance, no judgment, no competition. Just people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. After she left, I sat thinking about how much had changed in 6 months. The properties were thriving. I'd raised rents slightly on turnover, upgraded several units, and increased the portfolio value to $3.9 million. My consulting business was booming. I'd been asked to teach a course on property management at Arizona State University. But more than any of that, I'd found peace. Peace in knowing my worth wasn't determined by family approval. Peace in understanding that success could be quiet and still be real. Peace in the life Grandma Helen had helped me build. My phone rang. Robert Morrison, my attorney. Sophia, I have news. Your parents' house just went into foreclosure proceedings. I sat up straight. What? Apparently they've been living well beyond their means for years. The stock market downturn hit their investments hard. They're 3 months behind on their mortgage. How did you find this out? Public records. I've been monitoring just in case they tried anything legal against you. But this is significant. How significant? They're going to lose the Paradise Valley house. Unless someone bails them out, they'll be facing bankruptcy within 6 months. I stared at my phone. And you're telling me this because? Because they're going to ask you for help. The daughter with $3.9 million in assets and $500,000 in liquid savings. They're going to come to you. What should I do? That's not a legal question. That's a personal one. After we hung up, I sat watching the Scottsdale sunset. The same sun that was setting over my 8 rental properties, over the tenants who'd become friends, over the life I'd built from Grandma's wisdom and my own determination. My parents had spent years telling me I was a failure, an embarrassment, someone who'd never amount to anything. Now they were the ones failing. The irony was almost too perfect. The call came 3 weeks later. Mom's number. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Sophia. Her voice was different. Small, broken, nothing like the confident dismissal I'd grown up with. We need to talk. About. You know about what? The house. The foreclosure. She couldn't say it. The financial problems. I do. We need help. Your father and I, we made some bad investments, and with the market downturn we're in a difficult position. We're going to lose the house. I'm sorry to hear that. We were hoping, given that you have resources now, you might be willing to help family. Family. The word hung in the air. Let me make sure I understand, I said carefully. 6 months ago, you uninvited me from Thanksgiving because I'd embarrass you. You planned to divide an inheritance I already owned without including me because I hadn't earned it. You've spent years treating me like a failure. And now you want me to use the inheritance you tried to deny me to bail you out of a mess you created. Silence. Mom, I'm going to say something and I need you to really hear it. For 29 years, you and Dad taught me that my worth was determined by your definition of success. You taught me that I was less than, that I'd never measure up, that I was an embarrassment to the family. You were wrong, but I internalized that message for a long time. Sophia. I'm not finished. Grandma Helen taught me something different. She taught me that real success is quiet, that real wealth is strategic, that real family shows up even when there's nothing to gain. She saw value in me when you couldn't. She invested in me when you wouldn't. And she left me her legacy because I was the only one who respected it. We're sorry. We were wrong about you. We see that now. Do you? Or do you just see that I have money and you need it? Mom started crying. Please, Sophia. We're going to be homeless. We're your parents. You can't just let us lose everything. Why not? You were perfectly comfortable with me having nothing. You were planning to give me $50,000 while my siblings got millions. You didn't care about my financial security. Why should I care about yours? Because we're family. We weren't family when it was convenient for you. We were only family when you could use me as your cautionary tale, your example of what not to be. I was family when you needed someone to look down on. Now suddenly I'm family when you need money? That's not fair. Mom, I'm going to make you an offer. It's non-negotiable and it's the only help you'll get from me. Anything. We'll do anything. I'll pay off your mortgage. Clear the foreclosure. Keep you from bankruptcy. Oh, thank God. But in exchange you're selling the house and downsizing. I'll find you a modest home, something appropriate to your actual income. You'll live within your means. No more status symbols, no more keeping up appearances, no more pretending to be wealthier than you are. But the Paradise Valley house is a symbol of everything that's wrong with how you live. It's not an asset, Mom. It's an anchor. You can't afford it, you never could afford it, and you've been drowning trying to maintain an image instead of building real financial security. Your father will never agree to this. Then he can face bankruptcy. I'm not going to enable the same behavior that created this mess. Either you accept my help with my conditions or you figure it out yourselves. Can we think about it? You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. Not from fear or doubt, but from the weight of finally, completely setting boundaries with people who'd never respected them. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason. I heard Mom called you. Whatever she asked for, double it for me. I'm underwater too. Brother to sister, we should help each other. I laughed out loud. The audacity. I blocked his number. Then Olivia. Sophia, I know we haven't been close, but I want you to know I never supported how they treated you. If you help Mom and Dad, could you help me too? Medical school loans are crushing me. I stared at that message for a long time. Olivia had been nicer than Mason, kinder than my parents. But she'd also been complicit. She'd watched them treat me like dirt for years and said nothing. She'd benefited from being the golden child while I was the scapegoat. I typed back, Olivia, you're a doctor married to another doctor. Your household income is probably $500,000 plus annually. If you're drowning in debt with that income, that's a budgeting problem, not a resource problem. I'm not subsidizing your lifestyle. Her response came quickly. I can't believe how selfish you've become. Grandma would be ashamed. I smiled. Grandma would be proud that I'm not letting family guilt manipulate me into bad financial decisions. She taught me that. I blocked her number too. 47 hours later, my parents accepted my offer. I paid off their $890,000 mortgage, clearing the foreclosure. Then I helped them sell the Paradise Valley house for $1.4 million. After paying off the mortgage, selling costs, and their other debts, they had about $350,000 left. I helped them buy a modest 3-bedroom home in a nice but not extravagant neighborhood for $320,000. The remaining $30,000 went into savings. This is humiliating, Dad said when I took them to see the house. Our friends will know we've downgraded. Your friends will know you're living within your means. There's no shame in that. We went from a $2 million home to this. You went from a $2 million home you couldn't afford to a $320,000 home that's paid off. That's called financial wisdom, not humiliation. Mom was crying again. How did it come to this? We had everything. You had the appearance of everything. There's a difference. The moving day was surreal. Watching my parents pack up their designer furniture, their expensive art, their status symbols, knowing that half of it would need to be sold to pay remaining debts. Mason and Olivia came to help, but really they came to take what they wanted before things were sold. This painting is mine, Mason announced, pointing at a $15,000 piece. Dad promised it to me. Take it, I said. It'll look great in the apartment you'll probably be moving to when your own debts catch up with you. His face went red. At least I earned my success. I didn't manipulate an old woman into giving me everything. You're right. You manipulated banks into lending you money you can't repay. Much more honorable. Olivia tried to play peacemaker. Can we not do this? This is hard enough without fighting. Then stop fighting, I said simply. I'm helping our parents because they're family and I'm not cruel. But I'm not pretending that you all didn't show me exactly who you are over the past 29 years. We're sorry, she said. Can't that be enough? Sorry for what? 4 years of dismissal? For uninviting me from Thanksgiving? For planning to steal an inheritance I already owned? Which part are you sorry for, Olivia? All of it. All of it, okay? We were wrong. We were awful. We didn't see you clearly. But we're family and family is supposed to forgive. Family is also supposed to respect each other, support each other and value each other. You didn't do any of that. Why should I do what you never did? She had no answer. A year after that Thanksgiving confrontation, I sat in Grandma Helen's old office, now my office, in one of the apartment buildings she'd bought in 1987. The portfolio had grown to 10 properties, worth $4.6 million. I'd written a book about property management strategy that was being used in real estate courses across the Southwest. My consulting business had 15 employees. But more importantly, I'd built a life. A life with my tenants who'd become friends and occasionally family. A life with my consulting clients who respected my expertise. A life with colleagues who valued my work. A life with romantic partners who saw me clearly without the filter of family expectations. My parents lived in their modest home, slowly learning to live within their means. We had dinner once a month, awkward, sometimes tense, but honest in a way we'd never been before. Mason had indeed moved to an apartment after his own foreclosure. He'd been forced to take a less prestigious job at a smaller firm. He'd stopped calling me except for brief, stiff holiday texts. Olivia and James had filed for bankruptcy to discharge her medical school loans. She'd been humbled by the process but seemed to be genuinely trying to rebuild differently. Me. I was free. Free from the need for their approval. Free from the weight of their expectations. Free to build wealth quietly, strategically, sustainably. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Miss Carter? This is Jessica Martinez. We met about a year ago at a coffee shop. You gave me advice about dealing with family pressure while building a career in property management. I remember. How are you doing? I'm good. Really good. I wanted to call and thank you. I bought my first rental property last month. A small condo that needs work, but it's mine. And my family still thinks I'm wasting my time, but I don't care anymore. Your story taught me that their opinion doesn't define my success. I smiled. Congratulations. That first property is special. It is. And I wanted you to know that you changed my life. Not because you gave me money or connections, but because you showed me it was possible to succeed on my own terms. After we hung up, I thought about Grandma Helen, about the legacy she'd left me. It wasn't just the properties or the money. It was the lesson that real wealth is built in the quiet moments, in the strategic decisions, in the patience to let assets appreciate and income compound. It was the understanding that family is chosen as much as given, that respect is earned through actions not demanded through biology. It was the freedom to define success on my own terms and the courage to walk away from people who couldn't see my value. Grandma had given me an empire. But more than that, she'd given me myself. And that was the inheritance that changed everything. The text arrived on Thanksgiving morning. Mom, we're having dinner today. Small gathering. You're invited. No expectations, no agenda. Just family if you want to be. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, I'll be there. When I arrived at their modest home, a home they now owned free and clear, furnished with practical rather than impressive furniture, the atmosphere was different. Smaller. Quieter. Dad shook my hand. Thank you for coming. Mason was there with Kendall, noticeably humbler than the last time I'd seen him. Olivia and James brought their baby daughter. My niece I'd met twice. We ate turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pie, and for the first time in my life, dinner felt like a gathering of equals rather than a performance. As we cleared dishes, Mom pulled me aside. I've been wanting to say something. About the house, about the help you gave us, about everything. Okay. You saved us. Not just financially but in other ways too. You forced us to live honestly, to stop performing, to figure out who we actually are instead of who we were pretending to be. That wasn't my goal. I just wanted you to be financially stable. I know. But it happened anyway. And Sophia, I understand now. What your grandmother saw. What she was trying to teach us. What was she trying to teach you? That real wealth isn't about impressing people. It's about building something solid, something sustainable, something true. You learned that. We didn't. But we're learning now. I nodded slowly. I'm glad. Can I ask you something? Do you think we'll ever be a real family? The kind you've built with your tenants and friends? I don't know, Mom. That's up to you. Family isn't about biology or obligation. It's about showing up, being honest, and valuing each other. Can you do that? I'm trying. Then keep trying. That's all any of us can do. Later, as I drove home through the Phoenix night, I thought about how far we'd all come. My parents, learning to live modestly and honestly. Mason rebuilding his career with more humility. Olivia raising her daughter with different values than we'd been raised with. And me, still building my empire quietly, still teaching what Grandma had taught me, still living proof that success doesn't require anyone's permission. I'd started with nothing but knowledge and determination. I'd built an empire while they weren't looking. And I'd learned that the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's building something so solid, so real, so completely yours that their opinions become irrelevant. Grandma Helen knew that. And now finally I did too.